The golden era of precious metals and battery metals is just about to start. They are the key drivers of our modern economy and manufacturing. The demand in sectors like electricity, e-mobility, the chemical industry, but also in the new renewable energy sector is rising fast. And so is, for example, the silver and the copper price. There's huge investing interest in companies which are finding those highly needed materials. The Canadian Metallic Group of companies is an extremely successful group of entrepreneurs with exploration activities and very prospective projects located in the Yukon and the USA. Today I'm here with Greg Johnson. Greg, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, could you please explain to our investor audience why you have formed the Metallic Group of companies in Vancouver and who are the member exploration companies of this alliance? And in addition, we would like to know what benefits and synergies you see in jointly working together.
Yeah, you bet. The Metallic Group is something that started to come together in 2016. Myself, I'm one of the original co-founders of Nova Gold Resources, a well-established, well-known developer in the mining space. And many of the people in the Metallic Group are part of that original Nova Gold group. So many of us have worked together for a number of years. We sensed that there was a potential turning point in the metal price cycle, having seen metals peak back in 2011 and then go through a sustained bear market of lower and lower prices until really going through a kind of a bottoming phase or a consolidation phase since about 2016. So this presented an opportunity for us to come together, recognizing a great opportunity to acquire assets is when they're out of favor, when the prices are low. It is a challenging period to raise money to run companies, but a great time to acquire assets. So that group started to come together. We formed 3 companies in the Metallic Group. So these are 3 separate public companies. Metallic Minerals, which is our silver and gold focused company. Group 10 Metals, which is our battery metal and platinum group element focused company. And Granite Creek Copper. So the opportunity was that in each of the 3 companies, we identified a district scale land position at the bottom of this metal price cycle that we believe has the potential to have a world-class or a tier 1 type discovery. And collectively, our group has come together. And by forming a group, the synergies, the opportunities are that we can have lower administrative costs to run them by sharing things like our chief financial officer and back office support. We also can have a deeper technical team. We can have specialists like a geophysicist and data visualization specialist who can float across the 3. And it allows us to have a collaboration between these various very experienced individuals focused on these 3 companies with their respective metals of focus.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like a big advantage to jointly work together and not do all the things separately. Can you please explain a little bit more detailed why is the group's focus on silver and copper and battery metals? And why is the Yukon, Montana, and Colorado promising region for your metal mining activities?
Yeah, so I think part of the opportunity in mining, we don't get to choose where we put our factory. Our mine clearly is where the geology allows it to be. We saw the opportunities in these metals. These metals are a little less prominent in terms of there's fewer of these kinds of assets than say in gold. And so the opportunities to pick up district scale land positions next door to 3 of the highest grade silver mine, copper mine, and platinum nickel mines in the world was just an excellent opportunity for our group to go after. So that was part of the reasoning, was being at the right place at the right time to apply our experience. Secondly, when you look at this mix of metals, these are all what we would kind of call the electric metals. These are all very important materials for the coming transition from hydrocarbon-based energy to electrical energy, electrification, and batteries. Silver for solar panels, one of the largest growing uses for that. Copper, of course, for all things electric, and nickel for batteries, and platinum group elements are particularly important for catalysts, for fuel cells, for catalytic converters, and a number of other innovative uses, including green hydrogen. So in a way, our group of metals is in its own way a kind of a diversified portfolio, giving investors exposure to these electric metals that I think have exceptional opportunity for growth in value over the next decade.
Yeah, I think so too. Highly interesting fields. And if we look at the mining districts, many mining districts are proven, but partially underexplored. How do you utilize your company's collective expertise to facilitate these new discoveries?
The three companies in the metallic group are focused in really well defined jurisdictions in terms of mining. Yukon territory, Montana, Colorado. These are all jurisdictions that have a very long history of discovery and mine development and a significant geologic environment. The districts that we're focused in are already districts that have operating mines. That means they have power, they have roads, they have mines that are operating there. And yet we were able to assemble land packages that were quite fragmented, oftentimes owned by private parties, pull those together, and then start to apply a systematic exploration approach to these underexplored parts of these districts that have been so proven to be productive. And so that strategy has allowed us to be able to come in and apply new modern tools and techniques, including things like machine learning and other modern tools for exploration, and apply those new models and approaches in these proven districts.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. But as you are doing your exploration activities, all three companies need sufficient cash on hand for their programs. How's the current situation on that? And do you have access to the capital markets if further funding is needed?
Yeah, so our team has great depth in terms of experience in raising capital. I mean, collectively, we've raised more than $500 million for project financing over the years for our various companies. All three companies in the metallic group are well funded. They have no debt and are funded to complete their objectives in 2021. In addition, we have in-the-money warrants that are naturally coming in, and I would anticipate additional funding to come in from those. So we're really in a fantastic position in terms of funding with not needing to go back to market at this point to take us to the next major milestone.
Okay, sounds good. I've also seen some high-profile institutional investors in your shareholder structure. How important are them for your cash position?
Yeah, so these are growth stage exploration development companies in the mining space. And often these get started by entrepreneurs pooling their own capital, then ultimately starting to tap experienced investors in this space. So people like Eric Sprott, who's one of our largest shareholders in metallic minerals, groups like US Global, which is one of our largest institutional investors, Crescat Capital and others. These are groups that have deep experience in mining. They've taken positions in these companies because they see the opportunity. I think it's the combination of being in proven districts, which give us a very high probability of finding something significant that can be economic. And secondly, the scale of the systems that we're looking at are tremendous, world-class scale, what we would call a tier one asset potential for a major mining company. And so having those investors in means that the group is able to raise additional financing when needed over the years. And it also gives investors a sense of confidence that experienced hands are co-investing alongside of the management team.
Yeah, sounds you are like in the strong position. Sounds good. Okay, let's look at your businesses apart from each other, the business strategies of all three companies, the Granite Creek, the Group 10, and the Metallic Minerals. How does the strategy for the future of these companies look like?
Yeah, so even though the metals are different, the strategy we're employing here is very similar to the value creation we saw at NovaGold in the last metal price cycle. And to give you an example on that, with the NovaGold strategy, it was acquiring assets that had large scale potential to be very significant assets, growing those resources, and then advancing those through the engineering stages towards development. This resulted in value growth through growing of the inventory for the metal, the resources, and then by de-risking through the engineering stages, the value in the ground of those metals goes up over time as we rate them. So in the metallic group companies, we're looking to employ the same kind of strategy course, in the three respective metals and in the three projects that the companies have, but effectively define the resource, grow the resource, and then de-risk it through the three engineering stages. And this is a process that will unfold over the next couple of years in each of these companies. But in the example of NovaGold, for instance, that resulted in as much as 100-fold gain for early investors who were part of that early growth phase. So we can't promise that we can deliver that level of growth, but it shows the kind of magnitude potential you've got in this. And in our experience in the life cycle of a mine, this early discovery, growth, and de-risking through engineering can create some of the most value that a mining project will see in its entire life.
Okay, sounds like many similarities between all of the three. As all of your projects are right next to an operating mine, do you see that as an important advantage? And do you believe that majors might have an interest to take these projects over down the road? Or if they're getting big enough, do you see any possibilities for cooperation?
Yeah, so I guess maybe the last part of your question first, in terms of part of our focus and why we acquired the district scale assets we did, was that we saw the potential for an asset the scale that a major would be interested in. And that was really important. We wanted to focus on things that could be big, that could have really meaningful size, that could be impactful to a major. And the second part of your question is really a good point. And the fact that these projects are right next to operating mines, that means the infrastructure is already in place. You've already got an operating mine. So it gives investors in the metallic group companies several opportunities in terms of exit strategy and value creation. If we find something modest in size that's compatible with the operating mine next door, we might be able to enter into a straightforward joint venture or toll milling arrangement to fast track that resource into production. Find something large enough that it's meaningful, that group may want to acquire us as the adjoining ground to give them growth and exposure to that. And the last one, which kind of relates to your first question, our objective is to find large scale systems here. So if we're successful in making a major discovery, it may attract one of the largest mining companies in, and they might even acquire us plus the operating mine next door to form, a tier one asset that would be impactful to them. So this has a number of real advantages for investors. It means that the risk profile is much less for these companies in the metallic group because they're next to these operating mines. It means the capital cost to build and advance these assets is dramatically reduced, and the timelines to get to production are also greatly shortened relative to a greenfields asset in a remote location that would require lots of infrastructure to be put in place to bring it through.
Let's look into your personal track record, because you seem like one of the key drivers behind the metallic group of companies. So can you explain a little bit about your past successes and why do you continue on with the same business strategy on your newest ventures? How do you see the precious metal and battery metal sector developing in the next months and years?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate. I've had a really exciting career. I started out as an exploration geologist for one of the major gold companies, Placer Dome, which merged to become Barrick Gold. So the first part of my career, I had an opportunity to be involved in a number of major projects for those large companies. Went on to co-found NovaGold Resources and was part of the discovery of the Donlin gold deposit, which is today 40 million ounces and one of the largest undeveloped gold resources in the world. Was involved and part of building the team for Granite Creek, which is now owned by Newmont and Teck, and it's one of the largest undeveloped copper gold resources here in Canada. So, I've been very fortunate to be part of those discovery and advancement processes on a number of different projects, and significantly those are in the same regions that we're working with. As part of running a company like NovaGold and now with the metallic group companies, I'm able to bring in my experience and contacts in the industry in terms of capital raising, in terms of exposure for the group. It's very early days still for the metallic group. We've really been very focused on putting the technical elements of the projects together, acquiring the ground and starting to develop the early models. And this is really the beginning of our process of getting out and starting to make the market more broadly aware of what we're doing in the metallic group companies. But I think these assets stand out against other assets in their respective metals because of their scale and their proximity to these nearby producing mines and the opportunity we see in terms of exploration success.
How do you see the sector in general developing in the next months?
So I think it's really important for investors when looking at the mining space to understand where they are in terms of the cycle. And mining is something that goes through significant cyclicity. We see these sometimes decade-long cycles. The last one went from 2001 to 2011, so a 10-year cycle was when it peaked. We then went through a bear market that took us into 2016 to 2020 for the low. We now believe that the building blocks for a multi-year commodity, potentially super cycle, have been planted, and that we are starting to see the very early days of that cycle developing. So we are very bullish for the mining industry, and particularly silver, copper, nickel, and PGMs, because the underinvestment that occurred during the 10 years of the bear market has planted the seeds for higher prices in the future. It takes 5 to 10 years to bring a new major mine to production in most cases. And so that means you set up a lag between increasing demand and the ability for the industry to supply significant new metal. And so one of the reasons we see these exaggerated cycles is that start-stop nature of mining. When the exploration is happening and you're putting money in the ground to find new discoveries, it's often at the latter parts of the cycle, just when you don't really need new metal coming to the market. And then as that oversupply gets chewed through during the bear market, you set the stages for metal prices to rise as supply cannot meet demand. And I think particularly, as you mentioned earlier, with this move to electrification, this move away from hydrocarbons, that's going to mean certain metals, certain electrical metals in particular, have very, very strong fundamentals. And we could see outsized gains in prices in order to incentivize new metal production to come to market.
Okay, yeah, that brings me to my last question. We seem to be at the bottom of the ladder, climbing up. But what are the 3 main reasons why investors should research and potentially also buy into all 3 companies of the metallic group, or just buy into one of them?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things when looking at any investment in the mining space that are important. First, investors want to carefully consider the track record and the experience of the management team. And in the metallic group companies, we've got a team with a demonstrated track record of success, finding deposits of world-class scale, growing those and advancing them. So that's one significant element. The second element that's really important is scale. In working for a major mining company, one of the things that is really drilled down on you is we're looking for things that have the potential to be world-class. In other words, measured in kilometers in terms of the footprint, and having economic grades that can make them robust, low-cost producing assets. And our focus in the metallic group companies has been in just those kind of scale and quality in terms of the asset. I think the last thing is understanding the political risk. In terms of low political risk is always an advantage to ensuring a project will be able to advance and is subject to undue risks. And lastly, I think the other important point to make is that in the metallic group companies, I think this exposure to the electric metals is particularly significant. These junior mining companies act as leveraged call options to the underlying metal. So in the emerging market that we see for electrification, for copper, for nickel, for platinum group metals, for silver, owning investments that are exposed to those metal prices can result in multiples. And particularly when you combine that with exploration and development success, can really be meaningful in terms of the rate of growth for investors investing in those companies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Greg. 3 highly exciting reasons to invest right now and not later. And I look forward to your upcoming news flow and hope to have another update soon. And on our YouTube channel, you will see following interviews with the metallic group of companies. So thank you, Greg, for being here today.
Thank you very much for having us.